Northern presidentials, one of which we can see the very top of if you look directly to the left there now. That's Mount Jefferson. And then the two northernmost are Mounts Adams and Madison. We'll see all of those northern presidentials when we get above the ridge up top there. Coming to the upper switch here where and then the two northernmost are Mounts Adams and Madison. You'll see all of those northern presidentials when we get above the ridge up top there. Done in less than 3 years. The first train went to the summit on July 3rd, 1869, and he used his considerable influence at the time to get Ulysses S. Grant to come ride one of our earliest trains. The sitting president. It was 2 for drive and 2 for braking. And this, as I say, is one of 2 locomotives we've retained in working order. The MW2 here. This is the older of the 2. It was originally built in the 1870s. And as you see, there's a 3-man crew on the steam trains. In addition to the engineer and the brakeman, they also have a fireman. It's his job to shovel that 1 ton of coal, keep that fire properly stoked so they can make it to the summit. Now, the Lakes of the Clouds hut is operated by the Appalachian Mountain Club, and they operate 8 of these huts throughout the high peaks of New Hampshire. They're all situated along the Appalachian Trail, about a half a day's hike apart from each other. So a lot of people like to hike hut to hut and spend a different night at each hut. So your reservation with the AMC gives you not only a night's stay, but a very substantial family-style dinner on the way down the mountain. This is a rotation where the up-mountain trains drop off the passengers at the summit and then immediately pick up the people that have been up there for the last hour and bring them right back down. So I'm going up and down the mountain all day long. There are exceptions. There are some times when a train will stay up there with its passengers. That's if we have different numbers of trains, a lower number of trains the next hour. But we got 3 trains. And so he was able to stagger into the tip-top house, gaining that story in a few moments. The summit's at 6,288 feet above sea level, making Mount Washington the tallest mountain in the northeastern United States. No wonder the weather's very different at the top than it is at the base. At the base we were at 2,700 feet, so our 3-mile trip to the summit is an elevation gain of about 3,600 feet. And all of that boils down to back and forth. And you see the pole right next to the locomotive there with an electrical box on the end of it. That's how the switches are thrown. The engineers can reach out and tap a button inside that box. Question. The status of the hotel that was to be built up at Skyline right above the ridge there, proposed about 4 years ago. It is in limbo. I don't think it's a dead project, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere right now. check out different angles from the train, take pictures or whatever, do that on the up mountain trip. And please don't touch anything at the bottom end of the train, because what's down there has to do with braking. It's all set the way it needs to be. Finally, remember that we're going to be on a grade the whole time. And what I'm getting at is if you put your personal belongings down at your feet and then you forget about them, next time you look down there, they won't be there anymore. So keep that in mind. Okay, you're on weather. And more on that in a second. Steve's blowing the horn, which means that we've reached our top cruising speed. And boy, that didn't take long, did it? We go 5 miles an hour, which will get us to the summit in about 40 to 45 minutes. So now that we're up to speed, you are welcome to get up and move around the train. So the two main distinguishing features, and then beyond it, Mounts Franklin, Eisenhower, and Pierce. Mount Pierce being named for Franklin Pierce, the only president to come from New Hampshire. Mount Franklin was named for Ben Franklin, and Mount Hull. And it takes 1 ton of coal to make a single trip to the summit. So a ton of coal and 1,000 gallons of water for the steam trains. The biodiesels burn between 16 and 20 gallons of biodiesel fuel on a single run. I think because they were having such a good time with him that they didn't want the laughter to stop. And one of the legislators then told them. See some hikers up on Mount Clay on both sides of the summit, silhouetted against the sky. And notice how short the trees have become at this point. They look more like shrubs. Because of the glacial action, they've carved it out, leaving behind a lot of rocks and creating this very dramatic terrain. So right beyond the hikers on the trail right there, that is quite a sudden drop-off, well over 1,000 feet down to the floor of the Great Gulf. So the Great Gulf kind of reminds me of a mini Grand Canyon, because it has the hiking trail going all the way around its rim here. And if you look up ahead here, we do see more hikers, and they're walking along where you see these little rock monuments. These are called cairns. They mark the hiking trails above tree line. So those hikers are all on the Gulf side section of the Appalachian Trail. You see more cairns coming closer to the tracks here, and eventually you'll see them up to the right. So we have a trail that's going to go right under the tracks just ahead here. It's called the West Side Trail, because it bypasses the west side of Mount Washington's summit. So we now see all 4 of the northern presidential peaks over there. So all the way to the right is the northernmost, that's Mount Madison. Just to its left is the tallest of them, Mount Adams. Just under 5,800 feet, it's the second tallest mountain in New Hampshire. And then around to the left we can see all of Mount Jefferson now. And Mount Clay, of course, right beside us. And there goes the West Side Trail off to our right. Sorry, I'm having you turn your heads back and forth. Looking to the left here, beyond Mount Madison, those hills and mountains out in the distance there are actually in northwestern Maine. Kind of like his cousin Kermit. And just up ahead here, we're going to be entering another trestle. This one's called Long Trestle. It has the 3rd steepest grade on the railway at about 31%. And but a rally racer by the name of Travis Pastrana drove this 7.6 miles from base to summit in 5 minutes and 28 seconds. That's no interstate highway, folks. It was a Subaru, based on an Impreza, but specially adapted for this race. And he did not go down into the thank me for warning. It's about to have questions. But look for the A train and don't miss it. Because if you do, you become a standby passenger. The only seat you have guaranteed is the one on the train an hour after us. And we're flat out all day long. So it might be hard getting a seat on a later train. And if you're with a group, almost certainly you won't be able to sit together and you might get split up between trains. So pay attention to the time and make sure you're on that train. And you will need to present your tickets to come back down. I think I was talking about that earlier. So make sure you hang on to those tickets. So over there to the left, beyond these near ridges, you're looking into Southern Maine. The lakes you see out there are all in Southern Maine. Just a little too hazy today for us to see out to the horizon, which is the Atlantic Ocean. It's only about 70 miles in that direction as the crow flies. So when we come to a stop just ahead here, if you wouldn't mind remaining at your seats very briefly and allow me to do what I have to do, and then I'll give you the go-ahead to get off. A lot of people like to touch the very top of the mountain, which is marked by a cairn. And that is on the other side of the Adams building here, between the Adams building and the Tip-Top House. And to get to it, when you walk down these steps here, don't turn, just go straight ahead. It's right there. And if you really want to do that, do it now, because a line forms. 3 train loads full of people coming up. That gave an infusion of cash that allowed Colonel Teague to rebuild the tracks, preserving the railway for almost another 100 years for us to enjoy. And we've just passed 5,000 feet above sea level, so we're now above the official tree line. And technically everything above this elevation is Arctic tundra. Much like Labrador up in northern Canada, consisting mainly of rocks and boulders, alpine grass and moss. If you look closely at the rocks, you see the green tint. That's an organism called lichen. And notice how they sparkle. That is a mineral called mica schist, which, as you see, reflects brilliantly in the sunshine. Alright, this deep ravine down here to our left is called Burt Ravine. It's named for Henry Burt, who published a newspaper from the top of Mount Washington between 1878. So since 1980, no longer any overnight accommodations at the summit. So take a look at this building here on the right called the Halfway House, because we're just about halfway to the summit. Despite what your eyes might be telling you, it is perfectly level. And you'll see that if you look at our reflection here in the windows as we go by. Look at how steeply we're climbing the mountain. Pastrana drove this 7.6 miles from base to summit in 5 minutes and 28 seconds. That's no interstate highway, folks. It was a Subaru, I think based on an Impreza, but specially adapted for this race. And he did not go down into the Great Gulf. All right, folks, very slow, tedious process. It can only be done while the trains aren't running. And we, of course, can only push one car at a time, so when we do it, it's only one flat car with a crane at a time. And up on the ridge there to the left, probably within the next few minutes, you're going to see a car or a vehicle moving along there, because that's where the Mount Washington Auto Road runs. The Auto Road is a 7.6 mile long road, climbs up the northeast flank of the mountain. As I mentioned earlier, it's actually older than the Cog Railway by 8 years. It opened in 1861, originally as the Mount Washington Carriage Road. In the 19th century, people came up here to horse and buggy. The first regular automobile traffic wasn't until World War I. The very first many roads back had one of their vans and get a guided tour. So there's the summit area up to the right, and that low-lying concrete building is the Sherman Adams Visitor Center, the centerpiece of the Mount Washington State Park. which occupies a 60-acre area here at the summit. And the rest of all of this land on these presidential peaks is federally owned. It's part of the White Mountain National Forest. Now, the Adams Building is operated by New Hampshire State Parks, but it is available to cog riders to go inside while you're up here. It has big picture windows you see there, so from the inside you can get the views to the north and northeast. But from the rooftop you can get 360-degree views with a very easy ramp to walk up to get up there. It's a flat roof. Now inside the building there are restrooms, a snack bar, and a gift shop. And down on the ground level, a small weather museum, which is operated by the Mount Washington Weather Observatory, a nonprofit organization that's been based here on the summit continuously since 1932. And if you show them your cog tickets, they'll let you in there for free. And if the little bit that I told you about the weather on the mountain sparks your curiosity at all, I do recommend it. It'll give you a better idea of why the weather is the way it is here on the mountain. And the observatory does a lot of weather-related research up here, Mount Washington being the perfect laboratory for something like that. And they provide daily forecasts from the summit, which you can get if you go to mountwashington.org. Now, in April of 1934, the observatory recorded the fastest land wind speed ever recorded by man on Earth, 231 miles an hour, here on top of Mount Washington. And they didn't have a nice, secure concrete building to hang out inside of when those winds were blowing. They were in a smaller wooden building, feeling like they were going to get blown off the mountain. And they probably would have if it weren't for the heavy-duty steel chains draped over the roof and anchored in bedrock on all sides, holding the building down. So you see more cairns here on both sides of the tracks, and this is where the Appalachian Trail crosses over our tracks as it bends away from the Great Gulf, making its way up to the summit. For those of you not familiar with the Appalachian Trail, that's a roughly 2,190-mile hiking trail that begins way down south on top of Springer Mountain in the state of Georgia, goes all the way to the top of Mount Katahdin in northern Maine. And trampling all that grass, that's not, you just don't want to do that. But this is a section of the Appalachian Trail called the Gulfside Trail, because it skirts around this huge ravine we're beginning to see right there. This huge dramatic ravine called the Great Gulf. It's what geologists refer to as a glacial cirque, because of the glacial action that carved it out, leaving behind a lot of rocks and creating this very dramatic terrain. So right beyond the hikers on the trail right there, that is quite a sudden drop-off, well over 1,000 feet down to the floor of the Great Gulf. So the Great Gulf kind of reminds me of a mini Grand Canyon, because it has the hiking trail going all the way around its rim here. And if you look up ahead here, we do see more hikers, and they're walking along where you see these little rock monuments. These are called cairns. They mark the hiking trails above tree line. So those hikers are all on the Gulfside section of the Appalachian Trail. You see more cairns coming closer to the tracks here, and eventually you'll see them up to the right. So we have a trail that's going to go right under the tracks just ahead here. It's called the West Side Trail, because it bypasses the west side of Mount Washington's summit cone. So we now see all four of the northern presidential peaks over there. So all the way to the right is the northernmost, that's Mount Madison. Just to its left is the tallest of them, Mount Adams. Just under 5,800 feet, it's the second tallest mountain in New Hampshire. And then around to the left we can see all of Mount Jefferson now, and Mount Clay, of course, right beside us. And there goes the West Side Trail off to our right. Sorry, I'm having you turn your heads back and forth. Looking to the left here, beyond Mount Madison, those hills and mountains out in the distance there are actually in northwestern Maine. So this is a vantage point where we can see three states at once. And you notice all this tractor. So you see more cairns here on both sides of the tracks, and this is where the Appalachian Trail crosses over our tracks as it bends away from the Great Gulf, making its way up to the summit. For those of you not familiar, if you pay the fare, alternatively you can ride one of their vans. Okay, boys and girls, take a look right here to the right at our little green friend. This is Rocky the Cod Frog right here in the summertime, bringing news from the summit, of which there was some to report at the time, because in those days there was a large hotel at the summit. So lots of people up there, day and night. It was called the Summit House. But all that changed in 1908 when there was a huge fire at the summit that destroyed all the buildings up there, including Henry Bird's printing presses and the Summit House itself where the fire originated. But it did spare one and only one building, and that was the Tip Top House. The building I mentioned before, Sylvester Marsh's salvation. Tip Top House is still up there today. You'll see it when you get off the train. And the Summit House itself was eventually replaced with a slightly smaller version in 1915, which stood there on the summit until 1980. After the state of New Hampshire established the Mount Washington State Park. And in 1980 they replaced the Summit House an hour here on top of Mount Washington. And they didn't have a nice secure concrete building to hang out inside of when those winds were blowing. They were in a smaller wood house. There's a white wood background behind it, the rock formation, so you can see the face more clearly. And like the original, this one is natural. Nobody sculpted this face. They found the rock nearby in the woods, they brought it to the track so you can see it. So here it is, coming up here to the right. See the forehead up top with the nose sticking out. There's a little notch for the mouth and the square jaw at the bottom. That makes him look a little like Jay Leno. Jay was here a few years ago. He rode the railway and he got to see himself in the mountain. It's also a mirror for Jay Leno. Now dead ahead here is, you look up here to the left, down to the left of the tracks, you can see the ruins of the original walk trestle, still strewn about up there after all these years. And coming near the end of the Depression, that destruction almost did in the railway for good. But thanks to Dartmouth College extending a mortgage to the owner, but you'll be looking right down on the Lakes of the Clouds hut, down to the base area, and a whole lot of other stuff over there.
city in the world. It's well over 6,000 feet. Even Mount Everest doesn't have one of those. It's designed so it won't freeze up at 50 below zero. It gets that cold up here. Those tanks, did they tell you what those are for?
I have to say, on one level, I'm surprised he's still alive. I mean, he's been struggling with health issues for a long time.
First I go over with my sister. She wanted me to go.
I have to say, on one level, I'm surprised he's still alive. I mean, he's been struggling with health issues for a long time.
First I go over with my sister. She wanted me to go.
The first train on the way up in the morning, head on. So for good luck, the brakeman on the way down, touch it with your bare fingers. It'll freeze you immediately. Last year we ran right through the winter on weekends and holidays, but only to the water tank area, those three buildings. Fire diesels don't like 50 below zero. They don't like 30 below zero down there, but because we have a new garage down there, we can warm them up. But we left them outside. It's pretty good size. Most of the hay goes up into Canada. The tractors are working on those. I can't have anything but vegetable oil in the tractors. As long as you pay me more money, I guess it's okay. So he figured it was a good idea to protect the top. That was an incredible water pump with a long shaft on it. They called it a water ram. And it was steam powered, coal fired. My buddy who was operating it most of the time, he just passed away down by Plymouth, New Hampshire. I wish I could have videotaped it. Those hoops out there, did Tom tell you about them? That was around the big tank that was here for over 100 years. All the women said he was ruined there. That place was littered with the new growth, and the moose were down there. They liked that new stuff growing up. Goes all the way to Key West. Anybody been down there? I saw some of the deer down there when I was in college. We worked in California, there's one longer. Starts up in northern Maine, it goes through Jefferson, right by Santa's Village. No, Route 2. That one right there. Over while it was empty, get another 6 inches or so, and we'll fix the bed. Started falling over. So the guys went down and told the owner. He came up on a train, the 11th president, the 7th president beat him. Andrew Jackson could have had his name over there. The Red Coast, did he tell you that's the only one that's never been used by a steamer? Started. Exactly. If you look behind us, you can see Profile Rock. Ken Leonard was here 2 years ago. He went up on the steam engine. He didn't see it on the way up. You know why? He was sugar of 1866. You keep forgetting. I'm glad they put it on the seats. It didn't have a name back then, but it went right around the Presidential Mountains. Ended up down in Middleton, New Hampshire, 25 miles away. That's the steam engine that's down there at parking lot. You can see it? If you're on your right on the way down. That's not a replica, that's the actual one. We spent 2 years before our 150th anniversary sprucing it up, sandblasting it. Where could he right where that washout is? I don't know anything else that's about 400 pounds of black. He was scavenging over there, just... I thought maybe he was looking for gold. I don't think they care about it. Right up to the top. There's extra tanks up there too. And when the train would stay up there overnight after the morning of 8 pennies, all dark colored, I still haven't found out who did that. They took a whole roll of blue pennies and spread them out. Did Tom tell you what that was all about? After World War II, there was a 3.5-mile iron pipeline going up to one of the crew. They were in that building at the very end. They're rebuilding that one new. I think they're going to put the 3 chains back over the top of it. I said, did you know a lot about it? She said, yeah, my uncle talked about that all the time. I think in English it means the mountain where the Great Spirit rises. That's directly east from down here when they were talking to the first Europeans in the late 1700s. And I hope they weren't talking about the aliens. I'm hoping it was the sun. A couple of our engineers this spring hiking down through that ravine. Hope the brakes work. Evidently it worked. I never read anything about crashes, but Money Rock last year in the fall had a lot of silver change on it, but the track crew was working up there. When I saw him one day, I said, what happened to the silver? That building on the right-hand side of Mount Madison is a real long building. Right close to where the mountain is a 400-foot tall water tank. I went over there 5 years ago to apply for a job. They were paying like $65 an hour. I figured I could, in a month, make more than a whole summer here. I couldn't believe it when they wouldn't even give me an application. They didn't know my name. I said, look in an application. They said, yeah. I said, you know who I am? Colonel T. After he passed away. Main railroad got up from our brewery down in Massachusetts. Exactly.